The legal troubles for Donald Trump, they just keep piling up. The latest lawsuit against the former president was just filed by the NAACP on behalf of Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi. The suit says that Trump and his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, violated an 1871 statute called the Ku Klux Klan Act when they incited a riot with the goal of preventing Congress from certifying the election. Now, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers are also named in the suit, as those far-right groups were part of the mob that stormed the Capitol last month. Also, Speaker Pelosi announcing today that they are forming an independent panel modeled after the 9/11 Commission to investigate the attack on the Capitol. Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, she's a Democrat from Texas, also a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's kind enough to join us. Congresswoman, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Well, what do you think of your colleague in the NAACP suit? Do you think not only is it merits, but also do you think it's the right thing to do given what we just went through?
Well, I'm not really surprised that the NAACP wanted to lead this because there's been a great deal of discussion and concern that the Senate was not able to address the issue. And the community is still kind of in arms as to why it happened and why can't we get to the bottom of it.
How weird is it, Congresswoman, going back to Congress and you're going to look across the aisle and you're going to see members who could have possibly aided and abetted the rioters, or certainly you have the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world who are from a different world, frankly, right now, that yes, you have different politics, but it's never like this. How hard is it going to be to do business with folks that literally sided with people who led an insurrection?
Well, that is yet to be determined. You know, we have not really been together for a while. We vote in groups. We see those that are in the group of which we vote. It is not going to be easy, but we live with each other every day with different views. We expect that we will have different views so that we can get to the bottom of each issue. So disagreeing is not new and not anything we cannot deal with. I think that is when it goes beyond that is where we have the most difficulty, and that's where we're going to have to work something out.
You know, in a few hours, President Biden's going to be laying out the case for, among other things, the stimulus package. And he's got a tough needle to thread, even in Democratic circles, where, you know, the $15 minimum wage, for example, some Democrats, at least in the Senate, have pushed back saying that's too big. How united is the Democratic Party in not just the need for a stimulus package, but a big one, nearing $2 trillion, but also the need for that minimum wage hike?
Well, you know, any package we have, none of us, whether we're all Democrats or Republicans, feel the same and have reasons to have our own priorities because we represent, each of us represent a different district. It's my understanding that we don't have the votes in the Senate to pass the $15 an hour wage increase, minimum wage. It is clear that we do need an increase in the minimum wage. I don't know whether to get in this package because we can only put in this package what we can get the votes to make it a positive vote. And so that continues to be a problem. I truly believe that we need an increase in minimum wage. I'm from Texas, where people cannot even afford health insurance, but working full time. We have probably more minimum wage and less than minimum wage workers in my state than probably any other state. They are hurting and do need more. I have met over the years with small businesses that hire many of them, and they do have some concerns of whether they can keep a full complement of people if they go to $15 an hour. But even since I've had those dialogues with small businesses, several years have passed and things have not gone down. They're continuing to go up. At some point, we've got to reach a balance, and that's going to come with votes. You know, in the Congress, it's based upon a majority vote or democracy, and we cannot do it without the votes.
You have a really interesting perspective as we still obviously struggle with this pandemic. Before you came to Congress, you were a psychiatric nurse. I'm curious, we are dealing, and we're going to be dealing with the scars of this for so long, and we're seeing it with young people particularly. Is there something we should be doing in advance of when the world reopens to just deal with what I believe is going to be a mass of Americans that are going to be dealing with the psychological baggage of this? Primarily, I'm thinking about the kids, Congresswoman. What can we do to get out ahead of this?
Well, we certainly can't ignore it. It is clear that we have got to deal with the issue. And I think that every state, every city, every school district has to address it because we have many students who are falling further behind than the average going through this pandemic because of the situations that they're living in. Many of our first responders are working people that don't make as much as others and cannot afford the daycare for their children to be out of school. At the same time, the children are suffering from the lack of interaction, lack of stimulation, and we've got to deal with that. It's going to be an emotional problem. It is not just the kids, it's the parents too. But we must look out for our children because that really is our future.
We've seen skepticism, and particularly the African American community. Do you think the problems with vaccinations is there's not enough availability of the vaccine, particularly in communities of color, or is it some of the skepticism, and understandably so after Tuskegee, et cetera, about a faith in the vaccine?
I think it's both. In the community where I am, people are asking every minute when and where they can get a vaccine. Those are the ones that I'm coming into contact with, but there are probably others who have some skepticism as to whether or not they should take it. I'm hoping that we can convince everyone to have enough confidence to take the vaccine. I really believe that is going to be the only answer to bringing this virus to an end. We have trusted vaccines in the past and they have worked. I was a student nurse when the polio vaccine came and helped to give those vaccines both by needle and on squares of sugar. We don't hear much about polio now. We want to build that confidence that we can get rid of this virus when we attack it. We can't wish it away. I don't think we can spend it away. We have got to stop the virus. And right now, that is the most effective way we can do it is through the vaccine. So we'll continue to educate and encourage and try to make it so that people can have a comfortable access. In my home county here in Dallas, it has not necessarily been that comfortable. We've done the best that we've been able to put together, but we have many, many low-income seniors that don't have a way of connecting, of getting transportation to the sites, or being able to stay in long lines. We're addressing that now. I, along with my county, asked for FEMA to increase our ability to reach more people, and we've been able to get that committed. We'll continue. We have another site that's been a large site, a drive-through site that is going well. Our biggest problem is running out of supply. And so we're not any different than most other places where we have worked very hard to make it available, but hundreds of people still do not have the availability yet. We've got to do it, though. We must do it. I think that's the only way we're going to put an end to this pandemic. We cannot afford to continue to finance the pandemic.
Finally, Dallas didn't used to snow or ice or these kind of temperatures, Congresswoman. Is this, more than just a shock? I mean, the amount of outages and everything. How concerned is some of the fears from constituents of just how bad this is?
Very big concern. I was out of power for about a day. Came on, went off, but it's on now, and I'm very happy about that because what made me realize that I had an all-electric home meant that I couldn't warm anything, and parts of my home didn't have any light, so I had to make sure I had flashlights and lots of cover for my bed. It's been a long time since this area experienced this type of winter. But with the global warming and the change, we really don't know what to expect when. That's another area that we must address, and we are trying to do that now. I serve on a committee where we are trying to get a lot of the research done so we can roll in some changes, not to be overly disruptive, but we've got to make many changes to compete with where we are now with the global warming.
Congresswoman Johnson, hang in there. I appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next, just 2 weeks ago, top health officials in this country, they were warning that COVID was going to get even worse. But since then, all the key numbers, they've gone down and gone down by a lot. After the break, an ER doctor in LA, he'll join us to explain where we stand with the epidemic today.